Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm David Duarte, your host for today's episode of Culture Before Content. We're excited to have you here with us on the Music for All podcast network. I'd also like to take a moment and thank Yamaha, who is our national presenting sponsor, for their incredible and ongoing support in making this podcast possible for everyone tuning in. At Music for All and within our entire Culture Before Content community, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music, which is what we do all the time. Isn't it great? We hope this podcast offers inspiration, ideas, and support to everyone committed to making music a lasting impact on students' lives through the power of music. Our guests share their take on success so that we can all learn from them and maybe get a few ideas from here and there. So first, thank you so much for being here. If you're watching us live, you're either on Facebook or YouTube. Don't forget to share out, maybe pop some question ins, like, subscribe, do all the things that we do on social media, because we'd love to have you be a part of the conversation. Ask your questions, share your thoughts, interact with us. It's great. And if you miss part of the show or part of this broadcast or all of it, I know, don't worry, it's okay. Or you just want to listen to it, don't worry. You can catch a full rebroadcast right after. You can watch us again on Facebook and YouTube and watch the broadcast, or you can wait for the amazing audio versions that are typically available on Mondays through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. If you need some details, just head on over to musicforall.org/podcast, and you can pick the one that works best for you. It's kind of fun. All right, let's talk about last week. Last week, we had Mr. Ira Jenkins, soon to be Dr. Ira Jenkins. I'm always kind of envious of people about ready to finish their doctorate. Anyway, it was great. His remarkable success at Alpharetta High School and at Decatur High School in Atlanta, Georgia were amazing. He talked about how he built an impactful, inclusive music program and really emphasized how much students are part of the process, which is near and dear to my heart. He sets a high standard for the kids. He sets a high standard for everyone. His ability to inspire excellence while fostering a supportive and connected environment was what makes him a leader in the industry. We talked about him being an adjudicator. We talked about all the things that make bands successful, and it was great. So check it out. Now, let's get on to this week. This week is exciting. We actually have our second guest from Arcadia High School. Quiz time. This is where Steven Spielberg, Linda Carter went to high school. It's amazing. And oddly, I used to teach there too. So Blake Allen, who serves as the visual and performing arts teacher on special assignment, which is called a TOSA, for the Beaverton school districts in Oregon. In this role, he coordinates and supports K-12 arts education programs, ensuring students can access comprehensive music and arts instruction. Allen has been instrumental in initiatives like the middle school summer band camp, which I hope he talks about, providing student opportunities to enhance their musical skills during the summer months. Additionally, he collaborates with organizations such as the Beaverton Education Foundation to secure funding and resources for music programs, which we will talk about, thereby enriching students' educational experience across the district. So please welcome to the show, without any further ado, Mr. Blake Allen. Welcome, Blake.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's see if hopefully I introduced you correctly. You are amazing. You have such a big role. Maybe talk about who you are, maybe a little bit about your district and what you do.
Sure. So I currently work in the Beaverton School District. We're the third largest district in Oregon. And I support all of our visual and performing arts programs. So in our district, that's our music programs, theater arts, and our music, theater arts, and visual arts programs here.
Yeah, big.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just wanted to say, and before you were the arts administrator, so to speak, what was your role? Were you middle school, high school band director?
Yeah. So before this, I can go a little bit through my origin story. So I grew up in Arizona. Yeah. And yeah. And I I got the music bug when in fourth grade, the band teacher came class in the classroom, talked about all the instruments. That's where we started. They had sort of a pull-out program, and that's where I got started in the band world. I'm a saxophone player. And so I did that in elementary school, and then had kind of an okay experience in middle school. And then I got a call in the summer from high school from a young enthusiastic band director named David Duarte at Arcadia High School, saying, "Hey, we started marching band camp this week. Where were you?" And so showed up, had a great experience in high school. It was kind of a rebuilding going on. They had several directors in several years at that school. And at that point, getting ready to graduate high school, really knew I wanted to do something in music. Wasn't sure what yet. Didn't know if I wanted to be a music educator or more of a performance track or whatnot. So I spent a couple of years. I bounced around quite a bit through some different schools. So I spent a couple of years at a great community college in the area, Mesa Community College. Had an awesome staff. A lot of the top call guys in the area taught there. Spent a couple of years at Northern Arizona University, where I had originally planned to graduate from, but was dating my current wife at the time, and she graduated before me and got a job down in the Phoenix area. So then ended up transferring to Arizona State University to finish up. But it was a great experience. Through all the transferring and bouncing around, got to work with a lot of different great music educators and get a lot of great experience in different perspectives. So that was really good. I graduated mid-year and got a job teaching sort of an overflow general music elementary job, which I had very little experience in elementary general music. Didn't know much about it at all. And it was just sort of traveling around. So at one school, I started just in an empty classroom, had like nothing in it. So I had to go, there was another music teacher I had to go borrow every day what I needed. Then I went and taught a couple of classes at another school midday in the actual music room on the teacher's prep. And at the end of the day, I taught a couple of classes. It was in the staff lounge because they didn't have a classroom for me. It was either that or being on a cart room to room. So I did that for a semester. And then did a couple of years in that same district. I picked up some of the beginning band classes. In that district, they had a model to where in 5th and 6th grade, students chose sort of a general music, vocal music, orchestra, or band, and sort of ended up doing a combination of general music and beginning 5th and 6th grade band classes. The more I did the general music thing, I really ended up loving it. It was really cool about it is that you get to work with all the kids in the school, and they're just so excited about everything that you do. It's really a chance. It's their first experience with music education, and you can really change a lot of hearts and minds. You get people really, really into it. It's really exciting. And it was really exciting to see those kids coming from 3rd to 4th grade and then join band for the first time. And having that first year of band with the students is it's so cool to see a kid that has no preconception of what it is to, by the end of the year, they're a band kid and that's their thing. And they're just like so excited about playing the flute or the clarinet or whatever it is that they're doing. And just to see that change happen in that 1 year, I always felt, that first year of band is the most important year you get with them. Maybe freshman year being that second most important. But so I did that for a number of years. Wife and I got sick of the heat in Arizona at some point. And we'd always talked about, yeah, exactly. We'd always talked about moving somewhere else a little bit more moderate, and had been up to the Portland, Oregon area a couple of times and really liked it. And so I got a job in a neighboring district up here. Doing something similar. I was at a school doing the music and band thing, beginning band and teaching general music, and did that for a number of years. And then I started a master's program at Portland State University in music administration because I'd always been really interested in sort of just the bigger decisions that happen in issues in education that really affect the overall climate that allows for successful music and arts programs. And I was really interested in just how districts work and how all of those things happen. So I was in that program and had some conversations in that district at the time who didn't have an arts or music coordinator, and started doing a part-time music coordinator position in that district at that time as well for a couple of years. And I'd help with some of the itinerant assignments with the beginning band teachers and organizing professional development, and sort of just being a go-to person to survey all of our music teachers and sort of be the person that would take all that information to the central office when that happened. And then the Beaverton School District posted a full-time music TOSA position, so I put in for that and was fortunate to get the position. And it eventually morphed into it all arts position. So I guess that was my long-winded version of my.
No, you know what's funny is, and to my audience, I had Blake for all 4 years. I was the band director that stopped the transition of band directors coming to the school that he was at. And so just for transparency, I had gotten riffed from my first job, and that's how I ended up at Arcadia. So there's nothing worse than getting riffed, and then, kind of finding a job. But Blake, it's funny, he talks about, getting that phone call, because I remember there were only 12 kids when we started. Before, I mean, you showed up like on day 5 or 6, I think. It was like just a little after. But yeah, there were 6 drummers, 6 instrumentalists. That was the entire band program that I took over. And I was starting to panic that there would be more. Anyway, it was great. But I had you all 4 years. And we both left together at the exact same time, because that's when I kind of started my Arizona State journey and all that stuff. But enough about that. I just want to say to my audience, I've had the opportunity to watch former students become great is amazing. And like Blake was the one that, when he first started high school, he was such a, really into it, great musician. And so as, you get to watch your students grow up and be proud. I didn't realize you had moved up here at the time that you moved up here. So, you kind of like pay attention to it's kind of like before Facebook, but, it was very curious that you got the TOSA position up here in Beaverton, because I think what I'm trying to get out to everyone in terms of culture is the support that you have as a band director, really in any position, is super important. And districts, I would say less districts have a TOSA or an arts administrator than do have an arts administrator. And I think your path to it has been really neat, because I didn't realize that you had gone to college, had started at Portland State and then immediately got that position. I kind of wondered how you morphed into it. I got thrown into it, but it sounds like you kind of like had found your way. So, and then also the general music experience is great. I think one of the things I like to talk about is, to the band director out there, because, next year's a new year. This one's, we barely just got started this year, to the average band director who doesn't know that they should or could or would teach general music, and you said it was such a positive experience. And that has been my experience, is when people actually get into the general music experience, if they dive into it with an open heart, they find out that they can actually teach band better. They can teach music better, because I don't know. I just think that connection to those little ones are fantastic. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who might find themselves teaching in general music or just started now?
Yeah. So, for one thing, it's just a lot of fun. It does make you a better band teacher, I believe. It made me a much better band teacher, because you take all of the instruments away. There are instruments in the classroom, but it's coming from, all right, here's your music, and then we're going to go through the music and teach you the notes and the rhythms and the musicality and all that. You sort of take that away, and it's less of like planning for a rehearsal and more of constructing a lesson with different parts. Right. And there's a lot of learning through play, learning through movement, but then you really focus on what are those foundational skills you need to teach, and how can you create engagement through things that kids like to do that are fun and a sense of play. I really got saved because I got clued into some of our local Orff Schulwerk chapters and attended a lot of workshops and PD through them. And that really saved my bacon those first couple of years. That, and just connecting with a couple of other really experienced teachers who I just stole all of their stuff, all of their lesson plans. And just, one of my teaching partners, I'm just like, hey, what are you doing next week? Can I have your lesson plans? And just did that. And then after, it's that first year under your belt of just, because you're really just building your own curriculum, week by week. And so you sort of have those Sunday night freakouts of like, okay, what am I doing? Do I have enough to keep everyone busy and engaged? Is this going to work? If you can get through a year of it and you sort of have that year's worth of plans, and maybe some of it didn't work, or you tweak it and go a different way, but if you can get through the first year, you're usually doing pretty good. The other nice thing about general music is you usually have multiple grade levels, classes in a grade level. So if you do a third grade lesson and it just bombs, well, you've got 2 more third grade classes to go, and you can try to tweak some things and fix it, and you get a couple of redos, which is nice. And usually, by the end of it, you've got a little bit better thing going.
So how long have you been doing the arts position in Beaverton? I forgot when you started.
I can't believe it. I think it's like 10 years now that I've been doing it. Time just flies in that whole COVID blip. I think it was like the blip in the Marvel movies where it's just like those couple of years. Yeah, just disappeared. But it's been great. I feel really fortunate to be able to do it. There's even a little more history behind it. Beaverton has a pretty good history of having good music and arts programs, but they went through a rough patch in like the late 2010s, early 10s, where they really had some financial, budget shortfalls and things, and made a bunch of cuts and riffs. And then so our programs took a pretty good blow. That's before I was in the district, but the community really rallied behind them, and they started a advocacy organization called the Beaverton Friends of Music. And it's just parents and teachers and community members, and they went to board meetings and they talked to administrators, and they brought in John Benham, if anybody knows him. He's a researcher in music advocacy, and they did a whole audit of the music programs and the support and the systems they had in place. And they created a music task force within the district where they really analyzed all of the programs. They did surveys, they collected data, and they made a bunch of recommendations to the school board about instruction time, scheduling, funding. And one of those recommendations was creating a central music coordinator position that would help oversee and help manage the programs. So that's how that position came about.
That's interesting. And, and the neat thing was, I started my journey in that position in, was it 2011? No, 2008. Oh my gosh. Now I'm forgetting what I did. And we crossed paths. Somehow we reconnected and we started the sharing of ideas, which is, I want to talk about some of these sharing of ideas, because that's really when I get on the assessment train. I want to get also, but before we get on the assessment train, because it's like one of my favorite subjects. First off, I want to say congratulations to you as an arts teacher, arts director, because I know that yesterday was the Northwest, championships for marching band, and you had a bunch of your schools represented yesterday, and I know one of your schools won their division. But I want to say congrats to you, because a lot of that takes support, which again, some of the things we want to talk about. But how was your day yesterday for your district? Just curiously.
Oh, it was great. I think the weather cooperated for the most part. A little bit rain here in between, but no, it's always just exciting when we get to that final championships, to see everyone's final polished show on the field, and just the army of just parent and community support and time and effort that goes into that. It's just always really inspiring and impressive to watch when it all comes together. And then everyone sort of takes a final sigh on the Sunday afterwards, so on to the next thing. And they're all having, planning their awards ceremonies and, celebrations and things before moving on to sort of their winner and, things for the next phase of the year.
Well, I know your teachers in your district appreciate your support, because like I said, I follow you because I have a connection to you. But when I talk about you to other people in the area, all everyone says is how amazing you are and what a support you are. And I think that's amazing. But here's another thing I noticed about your bands in your district. There are a lot of shiny instruments out there. So I know for a fact that you had an initiative or something happened in your district where you got some instruments. Can you talk about how that happened, or how the district acquired instruments, or what, but yeah, just speak about how, getting instruments or funding in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's been a couple of different ways, and some of it's just, part of it is just having somebody in your district, whether it be a fine arts or music coordinator, or if it's a smaller district, if you're a one high school district, it could even be just a department head. Maybe it's someone in your department or whatever, but having somebody who could kind of be that go-to person to communicate and make sure they're clued into what's going on with the whole budget cycle in your district. For when funding might become available, because it's all about playing the long game. You can't just go and say, hey, we have all these broken instruments, we need and ask for something to happen this year. It's all about looking years ahead and down the road. And sometimes you'll make an ask and it doesn't work out, but then if you have a couple other asks or funding sources that you're looking at, some of them will work out usually, and maybe one way didn't happen. So anyway, that's sort of my long-winded way before getting into the details. But so when I was hired, we had that music task force that happened, which was part of how that job came about. And one thing the district did is they did set aside some funding at that time for instruments. They had just passed a bond where, the tax, they vote, and there's fundings for building new schools and maintenance and things. And so a lot of instruments were purchased that year through the bond. And then afterwards, they allocated some additional funds through just the general fund for instrument replacement. Over the years, too, we've been able to, when there wasn't a central person in our district, districts set aside money every year for like curriculum adoptions and materials and things. And there wasn't a system in place at that time. So we do now have things set aside. We can update materials a little bit every year. It's not a lot in the big scheme of things as far as instruments cost, but it's enough to make some small additions every year and help support that in the meantime. And then our district just passed recently another bond. So, in our district, all districts operate a little bit different. And that's the challenging thing too. So there's no sort of cookie cutter carbon copy way of doing it. You really have to know how your state and how your district functions and how they work. But our district tends to put a bond on the ballot every 9 or 10 years or so. And it's all about talking to those folks in the district to make sure that your music programs are included on that. And it's collecting data. We did district-wide audits of like, here are all the inventory in our district, which took a while to collect. Here are all the district instruments that need to be replaced. Here's what it costs to replace all those instruments. And you just outline it all for them. And then we had another allocation in this most recent bond that we're in the middle of, replacing a lot of different musical instruments.
Yeah. Remind me again how big your district is.
We are about a little over 38,000.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that big. That's pretty.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to bring it up, because I know we are going to get to the culture part of it. And one of the things I believe in is have quality instrument in a child's hand is invaluable. If the saxophone has keys that actually work or even go below low G, it's like an amazing thing. But I remember seeing a picture of a tuba going out at some point, and when I saw it, I'm like, oh yeah, everyone should figure out how to get a tuba. And so you talked about it, and my story is my journey on how to do this started with band parents from the 5 schools in my old district, and they got together and bonded, and they actually went and did a presentation to the board and got it placed on the bond. And so, like I said, I always like talking these things to people, because you never know when you don't realize, hey, that's a great idea. So like you did it through a task force. My old district is before I was an arts administrator, they did it through the bond. When I became an arts administrator, I got very purposeful in getting a place at the table. And here's how I did it on that one is I got them to convince them to do athletics, activities, and band, and put that on the bond. And it ended up being like $2.5 million split, 50-50. Athletics got half, arts got half. But that was just really a lot of attention to just, again, talking to the people, because what's the worst you're going to be told? No. And so just that advocacy part as an administrator is huge. And I think that's why I said, getting those quality instruments, and what kind of effect, or, how have your schools reacted to the new instruments, and, what's been the positives coming from it?
Oh, I mean, it's been great. I mean, that's the biggest thing is, I think back to when I was in 7th grade or something like that, my saxophone had a leak in it. And I just thought I wasn't good. I just thought I was terrible. And I was, you get to the point where you're like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And your band teacher finally caught it. And they're like, oh, you just need to take this to the shop and you get it back. And you're like, oh, it wasn't me. It's like, I play the game even when I work with beginners now. I'm like, is it, broken or you, is the thing. Is the instrument broken or is it just you? So just having instruments that work have so much to do with how successful a student feels. We're at the point now where we pretty much have a decent instrument for any student that needs one. We still, ask families if they can't afford it to rent from a music store, or to, do some of those programs with our local music stores, so we can save those instruments for the students that need them. The next thing we're really working on right now is, now that we have all these instruments, how do we keep them functional? We don't have any sort of in-house repair shop, and it's been on schools to, cover the repair costs for their own programs, but it's a little bit all over the map and how they're doing that. And so we're trying to get a little more systematic in how we approach that, and how, we're looking at, maybe we do some central grants to assist schools, but making sure that those are assisting and not supplanting the school budget for that. So that's our next step right there. We've also done some things in recent years. A lot of the good ideas that we've had, we just steal from other districts, from other people we talk to. But my friend, it was the Toast over in Portland Public Schools. They started just buying all of the beginning band books for their kids. They're like, why we don't make this kids buy their own math book and math? Why are they having to buy their own beginning band book and their beginning band class? So we've been trying to provide some supplemental funding to schools for that, helping schools out with just having reads. Some of the reads kids come in with nowadays are just, I can't even get a sound on it when I put it on there. So good luck getting a beginner to be successful. So just having, some of those just basic supplies available for the students so they're successful. And, it's, when you play the game, is it the instrument or you? Hopefully it's always you. And then we can figure out how to fix that with good instruction and on that side of things. And it's not just a faulty instrument.
Yeah, what I've noticed out here is with all the moisture, boy, pads can become quite an adventure sometimes. So I always just hope I have enough resources to get those things covered. Fixing them is not, I would say, the easy part, but knowing what's wrong is kind of the easy part. But I always say this: maintenance is everything, and keeping up that maintenance on all those instruments is super huge. And it doesn't matter how old or how new those instruments are. But I think that's just fantastic that, watching how your district has gotten, a lot of this funding, because it makes, people like me who see your district try to get that word out to other districts, because it can happen anywhere at any time, and the positives. But, I was thinking to myself, so, we bonded once when we finally got back in contact over there. We were talking about my assessments that I started doing, man, because this is where I want to go to next, is kind of creating this culture of assessment, because it's, assessment it's almost like a bad word, and in bandland, I know that, assessment, sometimes it's festival, sometimes it's sight reading, sometimes it's, everything we do is an assessment. But, we've, some of us, I don't say us, some have gotten smart and started to calling these things assessments, so that because the vernacular is very important to the
and that's what they are. I mean, there's the big push now for standards-based, teaching and learning and assessment, and using rubrics and all of that. And I mean, the band world's been doing that for years. Every time you go to a festival, you're being judged and assessed on a rubric by 3 non-biased adjudicators, and you're giving explicit feedback on what you did well, what you can do better. So it really is just an assessment, your performance assessment.
And you're an arts administrator. What do you feel an assessment does for a band program, like attending a festival or attending, what kind of push does it have for the teacher? What kind of push does it have for the students?
Well, on both sides, on the students' side of things, I think it's a goal to work towards. It's something, it's an end sort of performance that when you're doing all your rehearsals, there's something you can work towards. In that aspect. And same with the teacher, just gives you a goal, exactly what you're being assessed on. And it's really professional development for the teachers as well, especially some of the festivals. I really like what Ed Protzman's doing nowadays over at Portland State. He has one where it's it's really just like a clinic. You come in and you just play, and you get clinicked and get the adjudicators work with your band for you. But something we've done, and I stole your idea as far as calling it an assessment. And I mean, there are district professional development dollars available, like in our district and many other districts, and we use that to help run some of our own district festivals, to help pay for the adjudicators. Because I noticed when we came in, is some of the programs that were fundraising for buses and subs and festival season like that were able to attend more of these festivals than others that were struggling, or maybe when I came in weren't, as robust. And so we wanted to be able to give that opportunity to all of our schools where they could at least attend our district festival. We also do it, and I stole this idea from you, is a pre-assessment to it. So in the fall, all of our middle schools record their fall set, and they send it off to our adjudicators, and they give them comments and feedback and scores, and some recorded comments. And then so when we attend our spring festival, they're just trying to compete against themselves and not other bands. They just want to improve their score and see if they can just improve.
It's funny you mentioned the Ed Protzman Festival over at Portland State, because I took my band to it last year. And it was great because Gary Hill was the clinician. And like I said, I think, I've been in this tizzy my last 10 years of my career of the difference between competition and assessment, and although similar, it's how you how you use it makes the difference. And I think that's why I said you as an arts administrator using it in your district, because like I say, when you take that pre-assessment, it kind of, as I tell people, that's your foundation. That's where you are. And it's, and yours are November, December, even though I think that is, when does your pre-assessment hit?
I try to get them all to turn it in at the end of November, around December 1st or so. But then we send off the recordings to adjudicators, and our initial goal was to try to get it back before Christmas. But everyone's so swamped, it never. It kind of morphed into the first day back after winter break, and then all of our adjudicators kind of just get it done by then.
Here's a thought bubble about assessment and band, just and how different it is. Like here we are, out here in the Pacific Northwest. I think we're on week 9, 10. It depends on where we're at. But we've been going basically since the end of August, beginning of September. And it's funny because we as band directors, we as music teachers, we don't put our assessment. It's not like we sight read our music and then that's where, and with day one, this is a pre-assessment because we all know what it would be like. Okay, it's wherever my band can sight read, but that's not the assessment we're looking for. It's really a first cycle of assessment, that first concert. And so it comes down to, and this is what I've learned. And I had to teach myself to stop competing for the rating, because the rating is, although helpful, because we all want that superior rating or those, whatever high scores, it really came down to what are my deficits and is it a pattern? Am I always getting knocked down for intonation? Am I always getting knocked down for tone quality? And that's what that pre-assessment, that's what back in my head when I designed these things, that's what it was designed around, to give everyone the data to bring it back for the second festival so that we could fix some of those things. And so what are some of the things that you've discovered in implementing this fest? I don't know how long you've been doing it, 4 years, 5 years, 6. I don't even know. It's been a while.
We started it a couple of years before COVID, and then it sort of took a year off, and then we ramped it back up. So it's been probably about 4 or 5 years now, with about a year off in between. It was, we were ramping back up. Yeah. And one question we get a lot too is the pre and post assessments or pre-post festivals. We play different music. So it's not like you do the same 3 or 4 pieces that you did in the fall, but you take that same feedback. And so if you're, getting comments about how to improve intonation on the fall set, there's probably going to be a lot of those same things you can work on in your new music, and you just apply it to those new pieces. No, I've noticed it's been helpful. If you get, especially when you do year after year, and you can see where you're improving and where maybe you still need work. It just gives you some non-biased feedback and some rehearsal suggestions. This year, we're also working with some of our adjudicators to see if they can come in to do some clinics in between the two as well, so they can work with bands and give some instructional suggestions.
Do you do any type of professional development based on your feedback, or is it pretty much the assessment is the feedback?
Well, we have discussions when we get to meet as a team, and we'll bring folks in sometimes, or we'll look at who scored really well in some areas and ask, what are you doing with your band? You're doing amazing things as far as, your intonation and your band sound and your balance, and what are things that you're doing in your fundamental block. And we'll have some of our teachers share, or we'll bring people in sometimes to talk and present on different things. So we do plan when we have professional development. A lot of times we use that as something to help guide that.
And I think some of the neat thing is you probably get to watch the festivals when they're happening and get kind of like a, sit back and notice things and make some changes. What are some of the things that have changed over time for you? What are some of the things that you've noticed or improved upon?
One thing that's just really nice is all of our teachers being able to see their teachers at other schools, and the students as well, being able to observe. It's really helped sort of expand different music choices, because you can see what other bands are playing. So I've noticed that teachers kind of, you'll hear one band play something one year, and then 2 other bands are playing it the next year that didn't do it before. It gets our teachers talking a little more, I think. When they hear another teacher's band just doing really, really well, I think it just creates that community of just teachers reaching out to each other to ask for thoughts on different things. So that's something I've noticed too, that it's just that culture of just even within our district of teachers talking, reaching out, and just supporting each other.
So let's shift to the culture behind all of this. So, like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I said we've talked instruments, we're talking the assessment. And by the way, listeners or watchers, I would love if every district had a pre and a post assessment, because it does, you know, it's neat when you can hear what the sounds like in fall. And what I noticed when I did the festival, they are still doing it, by the way. I don't even know what year we started this thing. Um, the improvement on ensembles was, once we invested in the process, it did start the process of how to go to festival. And again, you're right. You're not competing for a rating. You're competing to be a really just a better band against yourself. And I think that's partly my challenge of the difference between competition and the difference between evaluation and the difference between just making your band program better. But maybe you can talk about, you know, you've been an administrator for a long time now. How do you build the culture and the relationships with the teachers in your school and even the administrators? What kind of things have, you know, from when you started to where you are now, what kind of some of the goals or ideas or things that you've gotten from building these relationships?
Yeah. With the teachers, I just try to be out in schools about half of the time if I can. I try to be out in schools as much as I can, with still getting all the other parts of my job done as well. Being out in schools is honestly a lot more fun than some of the other things that I do. So sometimes I have to actually rate it back a little bit, because it's just, when you're around students and the teachers, it's just, I mean, that's the fun part of the job. That's really, really rewarding. I mean, I will go in and I can work with someone's band, or I sometimes will just go to a beginning band class and just say, hey, give me all your clarinet players, and we'll just do a quick check-in. Or I'll run the band while they pull all of their clarinet players so they can do a check-in. So I'm out in schools a lot, and just some of those informal conversations you have with teachers, or just, just how are things going? What kind of support do you need? Those kind of conversations are really, really helpful. I think that, I mean, even just small things too, like we have a band teacher group text that we just kind of have going over the weekend, with our marching band championships. People are just texting back and forth like, hey, awesome job. I love what you did there. Congratulations to all your kids. That's just been really, really cool. That was something we didn't have my first couple of years. And one of the teachers one day just started it, and it's just kind of been a thing. And it's one of the coolest things that, even when we're at our state conference, people are just like, hey, we're all grabbing lunch. Who wants to go? That alone has been a really cool thing for building community with our teachers. It's administrators is a whole nother side. So when I first got this job, I didn't really know what I was walking into. There's not really much of a blueprint. There was no job description. It was just like, here's your desk, go do music and arts.
Wait, did yours have can at least lift 35 or 40 pounds? Because I think that was on every one of my job descriptions or whatever.
Yeah.
I can lift. Who knew?
Yeah, who knew that one? But yeah, there was no blueprint. It was just go make music good. And so just figuring that part out of it. And a lot of that is just building relationships with the administrators. And that can be tough. One of the tougher parts of the jobs a lot of times, mainly because of how often a lot of administrators move around anymore. That relationship piece is so crucial. For my first few years in our district, I think a lot of people didn't even know I existed. There wasn't like any sort of like announcement to everybody, that, hey, we have a music, TOSA coordinator now. So it was just getting out and introducing myself and, offering whatever support is available. A lot of times, when I get to sit in on music teacher interviews and offer that support, that's really when I get to talk to a lot of administrators. But, sometimes you'll build a real good relationship with a principal or administrator of school, and then they move on. And then, some years there's a lot of turnover, and then it's just that constant reaching out and, letting people know who you are and how you can help.
Do you ever have that fear when you get a new administrator, they're going to change something that, they just don't do that. Just don't change that. Let that go. Let that ride for a little bit.
Yeah. The scary thing is when you get a new administrator or when your music teachers leave at the same time, and there's a lot of turnover of your music teachers and your administrators, and there's just a whole shakeup,
What would you say to the band director that's listening, how to build a culture between you and your administrator? You probably have a very biased version how to deal with an administrator, and as do I, because once I stopped being a teacher that looked at an administrator like it's my boss, and now it's more of my community. What advice can you give the band director out there just to build a culture with their administrator?
One thing is that I don't know of any administrator who is like anti-arts or anti-music or is just like, I don't like music, let's, cut that program. That's never really how it goes. Like everybody wants to do what's best for the kids. And I think everybody thinks of themselves as supportive. It's just when you're dealing with those, finite resources and, there's just a lot of things on their plate that they're being assessed on and judged and evaluated on. And, there are requirements from the state that sometimes those conversations they have that, are more top of mind a lot of times. So I think a lot of it's just that positive advocacy of inviting them to concerts, having them be part of the program, inviting them in, just building, filling the piggy bank, so to speak, beforehand, before you need something or before something bad's happening. I think that's a big part of it. Making what's going on in your program visible is a big piece of it. And understanding why different resources, how those things are impacting students positively. I think that's a really big part of it. And just being ahead of things and being organized is really important. Having data on your program, inventory, accounting, all of that stuff, and just being really transparent. A lot of it's, I think, just building trust. I've come in, even when I was just teaching full time, I always had pretty good relationships with administrators, but sometimes at a new school or when a new administrator came in, it just takes that, I think, time to build trust. Even just with scheduling, I was at a school for a while where just myself and some of the other elective teachers got to help a lot with writing the schedule. And the new administrator came in, was like, well, hold on, I'm writing the schedule this year. And then, it took about a year to build up that trust. And then they kind of learned that, what you're doing, or you have sort of a shared vision, or they know what you're all about. And there's that trust building that happens. And I think that's really important.
And do you have any type of recognition for, it doesn't just have to be band directors, it could be general music. Do you have some type of recognition in your district or some type of, promotional for your teachers to say the district, the school board, the community? Do you have any type of special recommendations, recognition for them? Or do you have any things on your plate that's helpful?
For administrators or for teachers?
Just in general, like, how do your programs are very successful in your district. So, how do you have ways or things that you do to bring that? Do you have fine arts days? Do you have, just any other those things that bring recognition, not only just to the school, but maybe to the community, I should say?
Yeah, there's a couple things we do at our school board meetings. They do student recognition and they invite music groups to perform right before the school board meeting. So that's sort of some good face time with the administration and school board. We do a district honors ensemble for a middle school group and a high school group every year. And we invite our superintendent to that, and our school board members, and our superintendent sort of announces it. He also attends some of our individual attendance, feeder high school attendance area events, and does that. We do some things. We started a couple years ago a Beaverton Music Farmers Market Day, where we get all of our music groups out in the community playing. They also have a community parade that a lot of our bands and different groups do as well. So it's just getting out in the community. We have talked about, or I've tossed the idea around about creating sort of a music arts educator award, something. It's one of those things on the to-do list, right, with many other things. But yeah, those are some of the things. Again, those are one of those things that, maybe I'll steal an idea from another person that's already doing it.
For the audience out there, I don't think I have any original ideas. If I don't know how to do something, I just find somebody who does it, and I do my best to imitate or find a way, because that's if I'm that person that's like, if it works somewhere, it probably works everywhere. So let's try it out, and it goes back to continuous improvement. Oh my goodness,
something we're doing this week that we stole from our friends down in the Salem Kaiser School District, who have been doing this for a few years. Is they've had this college and theater music.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. They invite a lot of the university fine arts programs, and they have kids go around, and they have a big fair, and they go around and ask questions about audition and application process and financial aid. And so, yeah, we're doing our first time. We stole that idea from them, and are doing one up here, and it's open to anyone, and any student in the state of Oregon can come. It's at Aloha High School, Thursday, 6 p.m. to 7:30. And yeah, we're really excited about it. It's not only just for students that want to major or minor in music, but even those students who might want to be an engineering major and just want to play in the marching band or one of the community bands, or just continue with music is our goal there. So we just want our kids to think about how can you continue with music after high school?
Yeah, I still preach that we are teachers of creating lifelong learners of music, not creating band directors or that kind of thing. Because we'll have people who want to become band directors and music teachers, but if they're lifelong appreciators, just think of what it would be like. Think of us in mass if we were like this huge organization of music people. Every school in the country could have access if we all organized a little bit better. So let's talk about this administrative. Let's put it in the reverse. Now we can do opinion time where it doesn't really have to have a concrete answer. So I like playing like game show questions. Band directors thrive when there's access to administrative support and teacher support and student engagement. How can school administrators support their teachers? And if Blake Allen could wave his magic wand and say, how can we help? How could administrators help focus on the band programs? What would Blake's perfect world look like?
I think couple of things, if a principal at a school came and asked me this question, one thing I would tell them is just pop your head in those music rooms a couple times a month, even if it's just for a minute or two. We have some administrators who are just around all the time, and we have others that they're just, and I get it, sometimes they just feel like they're putting out fires all the time at the school. There's always just something, and they know things are good down in the band hall, things are good in the choir, we know things are okay, and they're trying to put out all the fires that are going around everywhere else. But if you've got a minute, just pop your head in. We have one principal who will come in sometimes, and he played trombone when he was in school, and he'll just grab a school trombone and sit in with the band. And what that does for the morale at that school is just pretty amazing. Just the kids to see their principal sitting there on trombone playing along. So just those little things I do think go a really long way. Another thing I think is just sit down with your music teachers and maybe at the beginning of every year, even when you're maybe doing your goals meeting, or just what are the things, that I can do to support you. And, again, those are those opportunities, all they can do is say no, but just having those conversations about, what are those things that are needed. And I think just having a shared vision of what the program's going to be is pretty important.
I think, administrators, it's kind of a handshake when you're younger. I think sometimes we view, like I said, we view them as these all powerful people. And sometimes we just have to remember there are people. And I've had to learn them. And I want to shout out to my principal. My principal has been absolutely fantastic. It's funny because if I went by my perception and reality, I think that's where I'm at. What's the perception of my band program? What's the reality of my band program? And I'm always, my perception was always like, oh gosh, is this good enough? Are we doing things? But the reality is that principal is supporting all the time. And it took a while for me to even build that own relationship for me. And some of the things that I like to do and is like, what are like little planned performances we can do. So, like sometimes I'll put, we'll do solo and ensemble because in our schools and probably many across the country, we have the commons area where it's in the middle. All of a sudden the kids to go perform during classes because there's enough separation, but then there's music in the background, and then just creating some of that aura, because I think that people start to expect how good the kids are. Whether that's real or not does not matter to me. I just want the perception out there that the music program is doing things, the kids are doing great things. One of the big things I have planned is we're going to be playing Silent Night arranged by Sean Laughlin, and we're going to play that at the end of the day when the kids leave for winter break. So that's I got to plan it out so my kids don't have to leave late. But I want just the school thing. What are the things that band directors can do from your perception to even promote themselves within their own schools with either the teachers, the students, or the admin?
I think just a lot of the things like you said is just how can you make your program just part of the larger community? I think sometimes we get really focused on some of these events and festivals and mile markers that maybe in the band director's mind are really, really important. But I don't know if a lot of those things, we came home and we took first place at X festivals. Sometimes I don't know is as meaningful to some administrators as that, you played at this pep assembly or at this event or this school function, or just, the students at their school that being in that program is really meaningful for them and what they see. I mean, I think a lot of those things, or even just the football games or whatever it is, I think some of those almost more community service based things are just as important, if not more so, in a lot of the eyes of the administrators. Not that it's not nice to have some of those accolades as well, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, because I was thinking about that the other day about, community support versus academic support, or, how many of us are going to festival, how many band directors are going to festival coming up, festival season. Does your school and your administration know what it means? Does it? And I'm sure it means something to you as a band director, then it might mean different to a principal. And I think it's how we frame it. And so, what do you have any advice for teachers to how to like educate parents, educate administrators, even educate their students about the things that they're doing in the classroom? Because in my perception, we sure focus a lot on that music, but sometimes we need to do just a little bit more in our community as band directors to support it. What kind of ideas do you think would be helpful there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when students speak up about what's important to them and the parents, I mean, when we as teachers speak up, I think it's meaningful, but sometimes we're advocating for our own positions, and that's part of the job and all that. But when students speak up about things that are meaningful in their lives, or parents, I mean, I think that can be really impactful. And a lot of times parents and students can say things that teachers can't say. It can be a little more direct about things. A lot of the best advocacy we've had in the district is where, parents and students have made some pretty pointed comments about, what they would like to see in their program that's not happening. And I mean, that's been really, really successful. And I think that's pretty important as well. That organization, that Beaverton Friends of Music that we have, I mean, we have, parents and community members and students to get together. Last time we had school board elections, they held a town hall for the school board members to come and answer questions about how they were going to support music programs. And so, I mean, that was pretty amazing just right there, where they were talking with parents and students and community members and spent a whole hour just talking about, this is how we would like to support the music programs in the district.
For people out there, I had a superintendent search about 5 or 6 years ago. And one of the biggest things I said was getting band directors to those superintendent interviews, because boy, did those interview candidates got a ton of band questions, kind of choir questions. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
And so like just being involved, and, if I can say anything to any band director, just speak your program to whomever is willing to listen, promote. It's probably some of the best things you can do culturally for your school. So, all right. Here comes the final thoughts, the big Blake Allen test of the day. So like I said, your experience has been amazing, watching your programs, watching your district. And I advise all of our listeners out there, when you get a chance, if you follow Blake's district, he's got a Facebook page for his district. You can see a lot of those things on there. But the success of your schools is to be commended. And it is no small part, not because of the people that are in it, and not a small part of you. It's just a collective of amazing thoughts. What do you have to offer? What would you say, final thought, on culture of band, period? What was your final thoughts about culture for band? Isn't that a great question?
I guess what I would say about it is just, I think just band and music in general is just, it's one of the most important things I think we have anymore for building that community, in a time when I think we're so online and so digital and so, I don't know, so much is going on. It's one of those things that just requires that group collective, something where you're all working towards something bigger than yourselves. It just, we're preaching to the choir here, but I just think
whatever the band directors. I'm kidding.
Yeah, the band directors, but just music teachers in general, just what we all do. I think it's so important. And, going back to the advocacy piece, I think the more we can shine a light on that, and not just, we're not just creating musicians, but just how it creates good people, successful citizens, things that prepare students for life. I mean, there's so many things that I learned in band that are not even musical that just helped me with my personal life. Just, that concept of practice, just like, how do you break down tasks into smaller chunks and, take one bite at a time? Just those little things and some of those relationships you build that, you have for the rest of your life. So, I don't know. I would just say, what all of those music and band teachers out there are doing, it's just important, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Well, I'm going to say my final word for you, because this is what pops in my head. You said it earlier, just probably think. If you are in a district without a coordinator, volunteer to be that coordinator, whether there's a position or not. Speak up. And I think it really did come down to your final thought, which is it's really the culture of advocacy and what that advocacy does. Because we all know like you mentioned, the content. Band is life skills. I mean, I cannot think of a better way to teach somebody responsibility than to join band. And like, as you said, think about marching band. What kind of responsibilities do those kids have to learn to put that product on? And when they're done with it, just how it feels, and they know what to expect. But out there, if you don't have a fine arts coordinator, be that person. Or if you have one, find a way to support. And in both directions, always send out, what do you need? How can I support? I think that would be super amazing for our community out there. But if you are trying to get a hold of Blake Allen, you can do so. So our viewers, you can see it. For our listeners, it's Blake_Allen, and that's BLAKE_ALLEN at beaverton.k12.or.us. We need some more dots in there, Blake. beaverton.k12.or.us. Home of Nike. Yay. Well, Blake, It has been an absolute pleasure. Like I said, I always say this, and someone taught me this. I hope you are proud of yourself. It's not my pride for you. I hope you are proud of yourself and the things you've done, because I admire everything that you do. And it makes me proud as a teacher to see who you are, who you've become, and who you're going to be.
Oh, well, thank you. It's great that we've sort of reconnected here in the Pacific Northwest, and that we're colleagues now, and sort of a full circle thing the last few years.
I know. It just speaks. Wow. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Blake. You have been an absolute gem.
Yeah, thanks for having me so much.
Anytime. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Culture Before Content on the Music for All podcast network. That was super fun. I'm going to keep advocating. Be your best advocate. Be your own fine arts coordinator, no matter how big or small your district is, if you don't have one. And again, I want to thank Yamaha, our national presenting sponsor, and Music for All for making this podcast possible. We're grateful for their continued support. And before you go, don't forget to share this. Share it on Facebook, share it on YouTube, share it on your socials, put it anywhere, put it somewhere. But you can visit us at musicforall.org/podcast. And we hope to see y'all next week for another great episode. Thank you so much.